Hi, today is Wednesday. Instead of Tuesday, I'm a day off. Way too busy yesterday. My name is Stanley. This is Market Block Books. So you can see the store behind me today, working right here from the front desk. And I have some books. There are so many books that come out week after week. And of the 165 books that came out this week, I'm going to show you just a very small handful. Plus, I'm going to do a second video with just children's titles. So come back, ask questions, and forgive me if I've missed your favorite author. I'm going to start out with a couple of paperbacks. The first one is called Yoga for Real Life by Maya Fiennes. This is, and she says, the book says it's the Nigella of relaxation. This is more than a yoga book. And by the way, yoga is more than just exercising. In case you didn't know, yoga is really meant to be the precursor to meditation. And she gets that idea by looking at a holistic approach to your life, not just when you're doing yoga, but ways to relax. She talks about methods of creativity. She has recipes in there. Great little book for a first-time yoga person or even a seasoned yoga person who thinks that all it is about getting hot and sweaty. There's more to it. And speaking of hot and sweaty, sorry, that's not what I meant to mean. Big yoga is for larger people. You know, if you have a thin body, I do not, and no belly, which I have, it's hard to do some of those poses, and this is meant to be for people who can't get into those poses. And by the way, you can still benefit without having to be on your head and curled up into a fetal position. I recommend it. I think yoga is awesome. Next is Thomas Friedman's paperback edition of That Used to Be Us, which is the effects of globalization, how we have lost our footing as the leader in the world. Next, also in paper, is The Table Comes First. Adam Gopnik talks about his family, about living in France, and about food. You can't go wrong with a book about food. And if it's set in France, this is lovely, warm, and cozy stuff. I thought I had a copy of John Katz's new book about surviving the death of a pet, which is also new in paper, but I don't see it in my stack. Worth having. Next is one of Susan Taylor's little obsessions lately is espionage in World War II, and Agent Garbo is just that. It's another wonderful book about espionage, British against the Germans. You know, these things read like great thrillers, even though they're true stories. Check it out. Ivan Doig is next on the list. This is called The Bartender's Tale. Ivan has not been a big seller on the East Coast because he's a Western writer, whatever that means. This book's set in Montana, as many of his books are. He's a terrific writer, really gets a sense of relationship, especially relationship to the land. In this place, he has a bar called the Medicine Lodge, which makes me chuckle because I have a friend who calls happy hour medicine time. And it takes place in 1960. You can't go wrong with an Ivan Doig book. He has many out there. Jonathan Tropper has a new book out. One last thing before I go. He's written several other novels. He is very funny, kind of self-deprecating. His characters are just quirky. Has a very New York feel to it. You can't go wrong with Jonathan Tropper. The Lost Prince is a follow-up to Selden Edwards' first book, which is called, what's it called? It's called The Little Book. God, I had to look over there. The Little Book, when it came out, really was one of my favorite books. It's been years since that was published, and it's about a guy who goes back in time to the turn of the century in Vienna. He ends up meeting Sigmund Freud and many of the philosophers of that time period, including Nietzsche. He also is presented with the possibility of killing Hitler as a child. Great story. In it, he runs into his grandmother as a young woman, and this is where that book picks up, when that young woman, his grandmother, leaves Vienna, and this takes place in the 1920s. He's a really good writer. Love, love, love him. And my favorite book of the year, even before it's come out, is Matthew Dick's Memoirs of an Imaginary Friend. Matthew has one of the most clever imaginations I know. Very funny. His characters are unique. They're just so unique. In his first book, he has a cat burglar who steals from the same people over and over again. He even does his shopping at their homes. And he's presented with a dilemma to help one of his clients, he calls them. And his second book is about a guy who is really neurotic, and as his pressure builds up internally, the only way to release it is to open up a new jar of jam, of which he keeps a case of in the trunk of his car. So Memoirs of an Imaginary Friend is about the imaginary friend of a 9-year-old boy, and he deals with issues that none of the other imaginary friends deal with. What happens when the little boy doesn't need the imaginary friend anymore? It's a very heartfelt, poignant book. There are some very wonderfully funny moments. You also get to meet a whole host of imaginary friends, like a girl's hair bow that speaks, a popsicle stick, a blob on a wall, a smear on the wall rather. Really, Matthew Dicks is brilliant. You need to read him if you haven't read him yet. And this will be one of the most wonderful books set in elementary school. Matthew, by the way, is a 5th grade teacher, so he knows that element. He knows the atmosphere. He is terrific. This book is awesome. You got to have it. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any suggestions or comments, and I'll be back with more. Thanks a lot.